One. Welcome back to Hoops HD, everybody. It is Monday, March 11th. And even though it's a Monday, just as we start, we got more faces showing up on the screen. This is a Monday evening bracket rundown show. It's our final bracket rundown show of the season. I'm your host, Chad Sherwood. We've got a full panel suddenly here tonight. John Titel and John Sleeka up beside me here. David Griggs in the center square. Matt Sikowski to his side. Joby Fortson jumping in right now to his other side. And I think we may have Brian Black joining us as well. He hasn't been free for a while, but we may have Brian Black on the show also. I think he's loading in.
I was going to say, if Griggs is a center square, now I know why that show got canceled.
There we go. We got Brian with us also. We got a full, oh, he's upside down though, but we got a full panel here, guys. And this is our bracket rundown show. We are 6 days away from Selection Sunday, Griggs.
I believe, yeah, it's 6 days.
And this is where what we are going to be doing tonight is emulating what the selection committee is going to be doing this week, but we're going to do it in an hour. It's going to take them a whole week because we're just that good, aren't we?
We are just that good. I mean, that's how good we are.
What we're going to be doing, what we actually did here is I asked each of our panelists to submit a list for us of their top 55 teams. It's just a number we kind of picked out as kind of through the at-large field plus a few more, but top 55 teams in the nation, regardless of conference. I cross-country scored all those top 55 lists. As a result of that scoring, came up with a master seed list. When I took that master seed list, bracketed it up into a bracket, and we're going to reveal that bracket live on tape delay for you. It is as of going to games today, which means most notably St. Mary's game that's going on right now, the Gonzaga's game later on tonight, not factored into these. I don't know that either game would really do much unless, I guess theoretically, if they both lost, the spot would be gone, but I can't see that happening. But is that everything, Griggs?
I think so. We'll explain as we go, like what a protected seed is, what on the bubble is, some of the terms that we use here.
Yes, but I'm going to start things off here for the last time well, maybe we'll do it under a video notebook, but maybe one of the last times this season, a little blind resume. We love our blind resumes here at Hoops HD, and I figured I'd go right squarely in the bubble zone here for this last blind resume. And the question I'm going to ask everybody, or at least a few of you here, is left or right? Which resume do you like better? And Matt, let me start off with you.
Ooh, man, I'm taking a close look at these. Probably just the one on the right, just barely.
Just barely. I know you like those predictive metrics, and the predictive metrics definitely favor the team on the right. Titel, let me ask you, right or left?
I actually want to pick the team who's fourth in the net because they beat both of these teams. But if I have to pick between left and right, I will go right. Left is a bit of a home court hero at 16-1. Right is better at OAR and J&G, and certainly strength of schedule and non-conference strength of schedule. So I think they are both major conference teams if they're playing all these tough games. And I'm going to go team on the right.
Your team on the right. The home court hero, but Griggs, the top two wins of the team on the left are road wins.
Yeah. These look familiar, but I can't place the team. I thought I knew who the team on the right was, but it's not A&M. So
no, neither one of these is A&M. I think we have Brian on the show here. Brian, can you hear us?
All
you're
right.
on mute, actually, Brian.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we got you now, Brian. I'll give you the last call here. Here, left or right, if you can see these, and which one do you like better?
I mean, when I'm looking at it, I see some more bad losses, not necessarily bad losses, but some more tier 3 losses with team on the right. And I'm one of those guys that really do look at those losses and see kind of where they were. My screen's really small, so I'm trying to see if they are.
Neither team has any 3 or 4 losses.
It's tier two losses, more tier 2.
We got some tier 2 losses. So again, we're splitting hairs, but one more tier 2 loss for the team on the right, and it's pretty similar. You have some more tier 2 wins on the left. I don't know. It really depends on whether they were home or away. I tend to think that the one on the left's a little bit more impressive a resume to me. They have, when you're splitting hairs on the top two, or there's two teams that each of them have beaten the quad 1. And then we have a quad 2 plethora for the team on the left. And then we have one more quad 2 loss for the team on the right. Again, my screen's really small, so it's not home and away. I can't really tell, but like, I don't know. I tend to like whichever team has more road wins as well. So if it's kind of a wash there, I still say the team on the left is probably a little bit more impressive to me. It's hard for me to see their net numbers too, but it looks like the one on the left, and they're very close. There's a 27 on the left and 25 on the right. I
Very
still look
close.
at that and I see a 20. I think that team on the left just jumps out at me a little bit more. It's very close.
Salika, can you name the two teams? Or Joby, go ahead first.
I have a
Hold on one second. Let me get
one
Joby's comment.
component that's very big difference.
Okay.
When you go into tier 1, it's night and day. 67, 68, those aren't tournament teams. They're barely NIT teams.
But the road
14,
wins.
15, 19 are protected. 2 of those are protected seeds, one on a neutral court. Yeah, the only reason is that I think the road gets too much, man. I mean, if we said road wins to 65, this team wouldn't have a tier 1 win. And so I'm more on the right, even though the overall record is concerning for the team on the right. The team on the right has tops out a lot higher. They've got wins against the field.
Okay. Salika, can you name the teams?
I have a hunch that it's probably going to be St. John's on the left and Texas on the right.
Wow. 0 for 2. You're normally good at these too.
Yeah, I know.
Uh,
John, you
uh,
normally nail
I'm
these.
surprised. The one on the right, I'm really surprised you missed.
The team on the right is Michigan State. The team on the left is the Colorado
Colorado, okay.
Buffaloes. 6 wins in a row and gone from Titel, I think, out of the picture to probably back in the field right now with this 6-game winning streak.
I think you're right. And again, I'm glad I focused on the number 4 net team. Yes, I think that they each have good cases to make. I don't know if I think I'd still pick team on the right now that it's not blind, but Colorado is certainly trending upward. And again, like if you do a little deep dive, they have Chad's favorite of those asterisk losses, a lot of injuries this year.
Yeah, they do. Let's get right to our bracket here. This is the bracket that we're going to be revealing. One thing is today is not March 6th. Let's see if we can't get that fixed. Today is actually March 11th. There we go. Hoops HD bracket rundown for March 11th, not March 6th. And what we're going to do is reveal one team at a time through the top 16 teams. And then we're going to go from there. We're going to go one seed line at a time otherwise we'll be here all night. Let's start with the by virtue of our voting, and it was not unanimous, but 4 out of 7 of us that voted did have this team number 1 overall. They do come in number 1 overall. It is still the Purdue Boilermakers. Griggs, does that surprise you?
No, I think it wasn't my overall number 1, but I think there's 3 teams that have established themselves as virtual number 1 locks, and whoever gets the overall number 1 out of those 3, it's not an outrageous selection. A case can be made for all 3. Purdue's got an amazing profile all the way around. I think them and Connecticut and Houston are clearly not just ones, but they could, as I say, miss the bust of the conference tournament and still be ones. There's nothing they can do to not only get knocked off the 1 line, but not be sent to the East, the South, and the West. I'm sorry, the Midwest, the South, and the to their regions.
Purdue to the
East,
Midwest,
and the South.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's probably the West region that's going to come in number 4 overall, and that's the team that's most up for debate on the 1 line here.
I've
Brian,
had
let me
too
ask
many
you,
edibles tonight. I'm sorry.
Brian, number 2 overall was UConn. Any problem with that?
No, not at all. The only other team I might swap out is one we're going to talk about, I'm sure, here in a moment, but it's very close. UConn, I have no problem with being number 2 overall.
Yeah, and this has kind of been the way it's been, these 3 teams, for quite a while now. Matt, number 3 overall, I think we can almost breeze through these first 3 teams just because of how locked in they are. It is Houston. And I'm sure
Yeah,
this team
that's
Brian was
the
thinking
one.
about.
On mine, when I filled out my ballot, I had Purdue. I still have a half step above the other 2. UConn and Houston have become almost neck and neck. I still prefer UConn today, but say if UConn does not win the Big East tournament and Houston wins the Big 12, I can definitely see a flip flop there.
We could
Yeah,
see a
look at-
flip flop.
Yes, look at that.
Let me just throw this out there, Joby, though. If they flip flop, it doesn't really do much in terms of changing the bracket at all.
No,
though. So
no.
it
I mean,
really,
Dallas
this shouldn't
and
be.
Boston.
This should not be a major debate for the committee. It's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dallas and Boston are perfect locations for each of them. They're not going to. It's not a case where they're stealing a region, stealing a sub-region, or et cetera. It's going to be fine. And yeah, Matt's criteria for a tiebreaker, not a bad one, but I don't think it's consequential at the end of the day. I'm personally a UConn fan. I actually have them as number 1 overall with Purdue second. But come on, I actually think it's you know, it's not going to be consequential, like I said.
I do want to say Houston, their first year in the Big 12, they blew it up last year. There was some speculation that they weren't challenged and that if they played in a good conference, they wouldn't be ranked that high. Yeah, good call.
Yeah. What are we up to now? Stalika, number 4 overall. This was not unanimous, but there were only 2 teams that got votes, and this team got 4 out of 7 votes, so it was pretty close. It is the Tar Heels, though.
I think I would have also given Carolina my final number 1 seed based on the fact that they got the season sweep of Duke, including the win at Cameron in the regular season finale, and Tennessee only managing a split against a suddenly red hot Kentucky team. So that probably gave them a bit of an edge as far as number 4 versus number 5. And Arizona also having a stumble at USC also cost the Wildcats a number 1 short of them potentially getting the double in the Pac-12.
Yeah, Titel, a little bad news. Arizona did not get a single vote for the top line. It was, no surprise, Tennessee that got all the other votes. If it wasn't Carolina, these are the 2 teams it was split between.
Chad, more bad news. Arizona played like a word I'm not going to say against down the road. I mean, embarrassing is the best word I can use for it.
Yeah.
I think that they're pretty much locked into a 2 now in that I think they're going to be angry in the Pac-12 tourney, so I don't think they're going to get upset in the first round, famous last words. And I think even if they win it, they're going to get maybe a win over the Cougars and then a bunch of crap. So like, I don't think they can vault. So if any 2 seed is locked into a 2, I think it's my Wildcats.
Matt, let me ask.
Losses to
Joey.
USC,
Go ahead,
losses
Brian.
to USC and Oregon State are really hurting Arizona in terms of getting a 1 seed, in my opinion.
Yeah.
After having watched them in those 2 games, there's still a few flaws there that I feel like either North Carolina or Tennessee are better.
Where's it go, Matt? I've got Carolina and Tennessee. These is the debate for the 4th 1 seed. Is there an argument if you're both these teams that maybe I'd rather be on the 2 line so I don't have to be in the West region?
Yeah, although put it this way though, if you're in one of the other regions, you're getting one of those other monster 1 seeds. So I think I'd play to avoid that and get a 2 seed instead. That's a little bit softer. That UNC, Houston, or UConn, because especially like Tennessee would not go out west. I don't think Carolina would either. So like unless they somehow were the 4-5 in the same region, which I don't think would happen because of geography, you want that final 1 seed and not have to play one of those monster 1 seeds until the final 4.
Agreed, Matt. And you get the first 2 games in Charlotte. So, you know, right down the road. So it's only those final 2 where you're facing probably Titel's Wildcats in the Elite 8.
Like
Okay.
if it were San Diego, or Frisco, Washington, I would want to go out west, but it's Los Angeles. The traffic is terrible. I don't want to go there.
Sorry, I have a little glitch there. Here we go. Number 5 overall. No surprise, it is Tennessee. They'd be going to the South region in this scenario here. And I think you're right, Matt. Now they may have to go through Houston to get to the Final 4. Had they been that 1 seed, they would not have to go through Houston, UConn, or Purdue. So maybe that is the advantage there. Let's see.
And
Who are we up to
think,
next?
I kind of think this is another one. Whoever goes farther in their conference tournament gets the 1 seed between UNC and Tennessee. 'Cause I think it is very close. And then I know in the committee reveal they did have Carolina above Tennessee, but like I think Tennessee's done some nice work, even with
Oh yeah.
since that reveal. And I personally prefer Tennessee's profile just slightly above Carolina's, but I think it's another one. If one wins the conference tournament and the other doesn't, that team gets the 1 seed, I think.
Yeah. And we all know who the next team is. I think there's a top tier of 3 teams and then a very good tier of the next 3 teams. And
It
there
is,
it is.
it is Arizona, and it is kind of interesting because of the way the regions work. Arizona could fall to 7 or 8 overall, and probably still gets to avoid those top 3 teams, Tytel. So you're probably going to West, and you're probably would not have played Purdue, UConn, or Houston to make the Final Four.
And have Carolina fly literally across the country for it. So no complaints at all. I think that is probably my best case scenario. I certainly wouldn't mind playing Tennessee if they keep slumping. Not that losing to Kentucky is a huge slump or anything. Especially the way they've been playing. They probably were a 1 seed before last weekend. But yes, I will not complain about Arizona in the West playing a team traveling across the country.
Let's go, Brian. Let me ask you about team number 7 overall. This is where it starts to get a little bit more iffy, but it was fairly solid here that Matt's Marquette team is in here at number 7.
Yeah, that's what I have too. After splitting it like amongst the other ones that are right there, I debated whether flip-flopping them with Arizona, but at the end of the day, Arizona's a little better. Marquette, they fit there. They've been hot lately. So should have no problem with them being at 7 overall.
What's the injury situation for Marquette, Matt?
Kolek, I think, is going to play at the Big East tournament. Like he was in shoot around on Saturday against Xavier, and then before the game. So plus, wait, even if he misses the Big East tournament, cautionary just because obliques are funny injuries, and that he definitely would play in the tournament. So if that's one, I wouldn't. Yeah, I think you could print like a full strength of Marquette will be in the tournament, barring someone getting injured in the Big East tournament.
All right. Let's go back to the bracket. Number 8 overall. Joby, this was a bit more up in the air. There are people that had this team as low as 12 and as high as 7. You're the ones that had them as high as 7. It is Iowa State, though. You're on mute, Joby.
Very good points.
There we go.
I tell to thank people like me, because if it were the team that I predict is number 9, Arizona might not be out west because they can't play UConn. And as I remember, so Iowa State, it's part of that Big 12 collection of just solid resumes, and the win over a team that's already listed, a team that will be listed very shortly in Kansas, with not a lot of bad, on the resume. This is a good, solid team. It's going to be a dogfight, though. A lot of teams we will list on the 3 line could easily move into this spot. There is a gap between Matt's team. Matt, I think your team's a 2, almost no matter what. I mean, I really do, barring a weird Georgetown loss or however the Big East turns out.
Well, it could be DePaul.
DePaul, yeah. If you lose to DePaul, okay. If you beat DePaul, you're a 2 seed.
Of course, that would be DePaul won
then
2
there's
more
like
games
4
in the Big East tournament than they did in regular season play. But
At 2008 Georgia.
yeah,
there's 4 or 5 teams, not just 2 or 3. There's 4 or 5 teams that could become a 2 if, depending how the conference tournaments work themselves out.
Okay, Chad highlighted something here, Joby, and I'm glad he did, because this is kind of what I take issue with. There's no denying that the Big 12 was strong and they had quality wins, but to me, it's a conference full of teams that played weak out of conference schedules. And I sometimes wonder, when you go back and look at past selections and seedings, how the committee treats teams that didn't really beat anybody notable out of conference. They did beat Iowa, so there was that, and VCU was at least decent, and it was neutral, so it wasn't all tier 4, but it was mostly tier 4. Like, if that was your diet, your parents would say you need to eat more vegetables. That is ridiculous.
And you're giving the
328,
You're giving the Jeff Capel argument that was spelled out. It's a net gaming. It's a form of net gaming without a doubt. They're just fortunate. Hey, a lot of teams don't beat Texas Tech, Kansas, TCU, Texas, BYU, Houston. Yes, they're getting the benefit of their conference, but at least they went out and delivered a great, a great 13-5 record in the deepest conference in America.
Yeah, it is net gaming, and there's no denying that. But one of the things I'm hoping is that, I hope our committee's tuned into what, gaming the system and gaming the metrics when we see it. And more important than us, because we're just doing this for fun, I hope the real committee is. And in the past, I think they have been. The year NC State was left out with a net in the 30s or whatever, they basically all but said, well, they just gamed the net. That they came out and
Yeah.
said that.
And I think not to go too much into it, I think in the offseason, given that coaches are now coming out and vociferously breaking down how the net is being gamed, I bet you that the formula itself will be tweaked next year, specifically on margin of victory or efficiency possession. I think that will be cut back because it is a case, and not to go too much into it, but this week, Virginia's up 20. Normally, with 2 minutes to go up 20, you bring the subs in. Virginia didn't bring in their subs until 30 seconds for one possession. And that was because of a net play.
Yeah.
That's disgusting. That
Agreed.
Well, we could
I
do
mean,
about 3 hours on this, but let's try to let's get back to the bracket here, guys. I agree with everything you've said, though, completely. Slika, number 9 overall, starting off the 3 line. Actually is Baylor, the next Big 12 team
Good
up
team.
here.
Good team.
Already your 3rd Big 12 team, and we have not heard the word Kansas yet. Your thoughts on them?
We are not going to be hearing Kansas for a little while, considering how many losses they ended up accruing in Big 12 play right here. Baylor was another team that arguably could have been on the 2 line. They did lose their regular season finale at Texas Tech, so that did cost them a potential opportunity right there. And unlike Iowa State, Baylor actually tried to schedule some decent opponents out of conference and did actually get a few notable wins, like Auburn, I think, was one. Florida was another that suddenly got a lot better. Seton Hall was also part of the Big East Big 12 series.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's going to be interesting to see if that non-conference strength of schedule may cause these two teams to flip.
Yeah, I like Baylor more.
Titel, number 10 overall. Creighton coming in here.
Love it. A nice immovable force resistible object game with Tennessee in terms of the defense versus the offense, and a couple of veteran coaches in McDermott versus Barnes. I think that this is right on the line for them, so no veto.
No veto. All right. Let's go over to Brian. Brian, at number 11 overall, how about the Dukies?
I like Duke. It's one of those things where it's kind of, I'm personally splitting hairs a little bit between Duke and I think one of the next couple of teams we have. I would honestly have one of these other 2 teams that we're going to get to ahead of Duke, but really I'm just using eye test, which I know we shouldn't do, but with how the net has been scrutinized, I honestly have been utilizing it a little bit more this season than I have before. But I'm okay with Duke in that spot. Really, it doesn't really mess with how I'm looking at things here. I just think that they'll work there in that particular place. There's going to be some entertainment value basically about where we put them.
Yeah, a good Joby. Is there not an argument that Duke should be knocked down maybe a seed line or 2? Because after yelling and screaming about player safety from fans for Kyle Filipowski's incident, they then throw everything they can find at the North Carolina players as they leave the court the other night.
And Kyle Filipowski pulling the ghost of Grayson Allen. I mean, do they really? I mean, seriously.
There was so much sympathy for Duke after that Filipowski Wake Forest incident, and they threw it all away in a week. They threw it all away.
They tripped somebody. Yeah, just all I can say is, you can take the player away from Duke to the NBA, but you can't take the Duke out of the player. I mean,
I'm going to say this: like none of this would have happened had they just let the Duke fans storm the court.
Okay, that's it. Matt, number 12 overall. Kentucky Wildcats getting up to the 3 line. That's that big win against Tennessee.
That win over Tennessee in Knoxville was what really jumped me to where, like, I've had them in the 5, 6, 7 range almost all year long, and after that, I actually had them at number 11 on mine because that for me is like a transformative win because even though I know Auburn's only 1 spot lower in the net, there are a couple of seed lines lower in the bracket to where that Tennessee for me is a 1 seed, and then if not, they're the top 2 seed. That's a legitimate like season defining win to where. I think they're most definitely a protected seed at this point, and I think could even climb up to the top of the bottom of the 2 line if they won the SEC tournament.
I
Hot
think
at
it's
the right time.
It's possible.
Oh,
It's possible, especially if the committee gives weight to the SEC tournament, which they haven't in the
Yeah.
past. But
No,
Tit-
great assessment. And our committee is going to give weight to it. So
yes, our Hoops HD mock committee. But Titel,
Yeah.
number 13 overall, is a team that may not win a single game in its conference tournament. That's the Kansas Jayhawks there in the West region, who have decided that neither McCullough or Hunter Dickinson is going to play in the Big 12 tournament. They're just going to get ready for the NCAAs.
Well, while we could spend 30 minutes on this one, my quick thought is that it's hard to say that to argue with Bill Self. He's a proven Hall of Fame, whatever, champion. It doesn't help to win the Big 12 and then have them re-injure themselves and then lose in the first round or something. So I think it's actually a good strategy. If somebody else feels very differently, I'm love to hear it. And by the way, could you get a little more blue blood in the West for me with Carolina, Kansas?
I'll throw one note out here though. Samford in their second to last regular
Yeah.
season game sat all their top players, did not play them, lost the game badly. They just won their conference tournament. So maybe there's I hate to see it. I like to see every team go all out every game, but I
get it.
can't. You can't. I mean, Dickinson did just dislocate his shoulder. He makes sense. McCullough, maybe not so much.
Stanford may have cost themselves a seed line, though.
Yeah. Unless the
with that
committee
loss.
takes into account that those guys didn't play, but there is something
They're not.
nails on a
They're
chalk.
they're not gonna get the benefit over McNeese, JMU, etc.
No.
They won't. They won't.
Yeah, something about college basketball. I know you see this in baseball. I know you see it in football. It makes sense for those sports, but I kind of thought one of the unique things about college basketball was that every game kind of did matter, but I guess it doesn't.
I
Salika.
feel like. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Brian. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I know that every game does count still in my book, but if you are basically locked into the number one seed in your particular conference, I still get it in terms of resting starters that like you are worried about maybe, really needing in your conference tournament. So I don't know. While I agree about the seed line droppage, I still feel like, I don't know. I still understand the concept in that respect.
Stalika, number 14 overall. Here is the Crimson Tide. Is this our fourth, or at least our third SEC team?
Now, before I go to Alabama, I should probably point out the city of Pittsburgh should probably consider extra police patrols with the Duke and Kentucky fan bases being in close proximity to one another. But getting back to the Tide right here, this is another team that their metrics are very good, but they really don't have that many number of quality wins compared to other teams. Yes, beating Indiana State's not in the field quite yet, but still a decent win to have at home. But when your only wins of real note in the conference are Auburn, Mississippi, sweep of Mississippi State and Florida, along with South Carolina, that could be a lot better. And a case could probably be made that Alabama wouldn't even warrant a protected seed.
Yeah, Matt, this may be the predictive metrics. That's what just pops out to me at Alabama is those in this case because they've got one decent road win. It's at Mississippi State.
Yeah, that's where I can see that point, but then as we look for other alternatives, there's not that many of those available at this point either. Like this is where I think after 13, it takes a bit of a drop off. And then these next teams are roughly similar up to about 19 or 20, but then yeah.
Griggs, number 15 overall. How about the Illini?
This is about where I had them toward the bottom of the seed list. I mean, I think that they're on the protected seed bubble, but on the right side of it. Good, probably a second weekend team potentially. Yeah, they're a 4.
It's kind of funny that pretty much all of us had the same top 16 teams with only one exception, Joby, and that's you. You did not have our number 16 team, and you switched them out for somebody else. But number 16 overall, Joby, who you thought should have been number 17, and I can't argue with you too much, is Auburn.
Yeah.
And I'll pull them up against the team that you thought should be number 16 overall.
Because I like how the team that I chose is playing right now.
BYU.
Yeah,
Agreed, Joby.
All I gotta say is look at tier 1. Alabama, and then a good South Carolina win. Within tier 2, South Carolina's a good win, and Mississippi State will be on our board. But then you peek over at BYU and you go, Iowa State now on our board, Baylor on our board, Kansas on our board, San Diego State about to be on our board, Texas. That's pretty nice. And now this is once again, the gaming of the net is beyond gaming of the net here because they were for a while out of conference, like 4th in the net or something.
Mhm.
But I like what BYU's doing. They're a good team. I think they're a better team than Auburn, legitimately. But yes, this is a tight call. It's not like, oh, BYU no brainer. But I like BYU more.
I saw a
Tell-
video, I saw a video this
Go
morning on BYU's offensive strategies, and they just seem a little bit more innovative than Auburn. Like, and it's not too much, but like they're employing a little bit more Purdue strategies with how they respond to their coaches and how they run their offense. So I'm inclined to also agree with you, Joby. BYU above Auburn is the last protected seed.
Yeah, Titel, when you look at this, Joe made a great point. You have one quality win. It was at home for Auburn, and they haven't beaten anybody on the road that's in this field. Unless Ole Miss somehow makes it, I don't think they're going to. BYU won at Kansas.
True, but then I would say, why are all the metrics, resume and predictive, so skewed left? OAR is like not even close, Chad.
Yeah, it's those predictive. But you're right. The resume metrics are even better for Auburn, and it's one of those head scratchers. Maybe it's because they have those 2 losses to Cincinnati and Oklahoma State, but I think we've seen worse losses than that already in the field. So
I think that might be when we start picking tier 3 and the 19-7 versus the 14-9. That's where I think strength of record. I think I've started to see in the 3rd tier is where you kind of separate. Like, you don't do anything bad, you got a pretty decent strength of record. You lost a couple in tier 3, strength of record does not like you.
Is it? Could it be that BYU played so many teams in tier 4, whereas Auburn played so? I don't know.
Yeah,
I think that's a big part of it. The game Auburn's still had blowouts to their credit in tier 3 to get those predictive metrics up. Whereas BYU got blowouts, and they were huge blowouts, like 40-point things against tier 4. That, you know what? Yeah, I'll give Auburn a little more credit, but then I always value the top of the resume the most because that's who's playing in the NCAAs. And I think BYU's top is better, period.
It is. Oh, it tops out way higher.
Yeah. And the losses, Oklahoma State is not a good loss. They have a worse loss. But I'm even going to give them a little pass on a Cincinnati thing because at least Cincinnati is within the NIT world. It's not.
Who is preceding the NIT?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me go. Let's see here, Matt. Let me go to you here as I reveal the entire 5 line. Obviously, includes BYU on it. They're going to be Kansas's opponent because that's the only region they can play in with their no Sunday rule. Other 3 teams are Clemson, South Carolina, and Utah State. Utah State, our top Mountain West team.
Yeah, they won the conference outright, so I think it's nice that they got rewarded though. I actually might have both them and San Diego State on this line. So it's one of those, even with San Diego State's loss, their resume is still pretty strong. Like, I'd probably have San Diego State over Clemson on this line.
And I would kind of be with you here at Griggs. I'm not certain Clemson belongs up here when you throw in 2 home quad 3 losses.
Yeah. Clemson just has a tendency to lose games that they have no business losing and no explanation. But there is something about not 1 but 2 wins against solid protected seeds that's hard to ignore.
No, there is an explanation here. It's called Clemsoning.
Yeah, Clemsoning is
Chad,
it wasn't.
Chad, pull up Georgia Tech's resume because
that one's weird, but it's still a team that you have to beat at home. There's no excuse for losing either one of those.
It's like,
yeah, I had them here, Chad, but you're not entirely wrong for questioning whether or not they should be here. There's an argument against it, whereas had they just beaten NC State and Georgia Tech at home, they'd probably be even on a higher line.
Yeah, and there is that there's that San Diego State team that he mentioned, and it's an interesting argument. They did not win their conference regular season title, but they don't have a bad loss.
Getting swept by Boise State really is not a good look for someone who is looking to be on
Boise's
the
a good
5
team.
right here.
Boise's a good, but I just want to say I like Boise more
team.
than San Diego State by every measurement available.
To wear white.
Okay, one at a time, guys. One at a time. Go ahead, Joby.
Boise State will be lucky to wear white. Let's be blunt here. This is where, just leave it, where the inflated conference metrics, and they couldn't even get a tier 1 win besides New Mexico, which may or may not be in our field tonight legitimately. They're the last team in bracket matrix, and they were out yesterday. They did in a conference with a zillion top 30 teams. They couldn't get a tier 1 win in conference. No. I actually, on second thought, yeah, I like Utah State more because Utah State at least accomplished what you're supposed to do in the Mountain West.
Real quick note here. You see Alabama, South Carolina, and Kansas BYU as potential conference matchups in the second round. If any of these matchups happen in their conference tournaments, that would be the second time these teams played, and that would not be allowed. But as of right now, these teams only played once. It is a permissible second round matchup.
Although that might get waived in the case of BYU, just because there's really no other place to put them.
Oh, I
You'd
think
have
they're on
to move
opposite
them down.
sides of the they're on opposite side of the bracket as Kansas right now in the Big 12 tournament anyhow. So I don't think they have too much to worry about, unless they mean the finals. The sixth line here, Brian. We have Washington State, Gonzaga, San Diego State, and Texas Tech. And Brian, I want to give you a couple minutes to talk about Washington State because while you unfortunately your votes did not get in here because they came in late, I saw where you thought Washington State belonged, and I think it was not even maybe on the other side of a 6-11 game.
Yeah, so I really think Washington State's overrated, and other metrics show otherwise. They didn't look great against some of the teams. They looked okay against the mid-tier, but like, especially earlier in the season, like Oregon went into Pullman and beat them, and Oregon's kind of mediocre. Like right there, right then, it's kind of like, I don't know. They don't pass the eye test for me, even though they did. I think didn't they go on to the road and beat Arizona?
Yes.
I believe so. So I think that's probably the best win. But I just the Pac-12 is not a good league. It's not. Like I have to be blunt. It's not a good conference compared to even what it had been sometimes in years past. I know I'm maybe a little harsh on them, but I don't see it. I just feel like there's some other teams that are up here that I just see that are going to be more impressive. And, maybe that'll give Wazoo a chip on their shoulder if they end up being lower than people anticipate. But I just, in watching them several times, they just seem a little fraudulent to me.
I think they're a great pick to lose a 6-11 game if you're picking winners in the event. But when you sweep Arizona, it's hard for me to keep them off of this line. The other three teams on this line, Gonzaga, San Diego State, and Texas Tech. Matt, Gonzaga now has passed St. Mary's on our seed list.
Yeah, actually, I looked at their profiles head to head because I was comparing them to see who would be what. Because I think one would be a 6 and one a 7, and yeah, Gonzaga's profile is quietly better. Like it was accumulated late in the year, but man, that's one of those the A student that was performing like a C student. All of a sudden, come finals time, they're back to being an A or B student again.
They love
will
that
say, if
exam
I'm a
in
Duke
Rupp
fan,
Arena.
If I'm a Duke fan, I want St. Mary's up in that line, not Gonzaga.
Oh, hey, how about that for a hell of a second round game, Duke Gonzaga? That will be your 12 noon solo national coverage game if that happens.
Yeah, that's
San Diego State, Texas Tech as well on this line. Let's jump right over to the
Texas
7.
Tech wouldn't be a half bad game either.
Hey, yeah. Jump over to the 7 line here. Titel, we've got St. Mary's does get in the 7 line along with Wisconsin, Florida, and Nevada. There was 3 straight lines with a Mountain West team on them.
As there should be. Tennessee, Florida, another SEC matchup. Iowa State, Wisconsin. I think that the way Whiskey's playing, you have to go heavy on Iowa State for that one.
I go heavy on the 10 seed actually, but
Yeah.
Hey, I'd like Arizona's chances. I'm actually, if you check out tomorrow's conference tourney previews part 2, you'll see who I picked to win the Mountain West, and I'll defer to Matt as to whether a 90% Tyler Kolek can beat St. Mary's by himself.
That's an interesting matchup. It's one that Marquette wouldn't love the pace of play, but I don't think their athleticism Marquette would be significantly better to where there could be see some teams on the 7th line where it'd be almost an even athleticism game.
All right. That is our 7 line. Let's keep things rolling right along here. Joby, the 8 line is Dayton, Northwestern, another Mountain West team in Boise State. That's 4 lines in a row, and Texas.
Yeah, I'm not, I'm not just in love with the Boise pick here. But otherwise, yeah, I think Northwestern's being undervalued for what they've done this year. And Dayton is being, I think this committee that just released it, I think Dayton is about an 8. The question is, I don't know where the real committee is going to put him. Bracket matrix once again has him as a 6. I think that's too high. So probably will wind up being a 7. But yeah, I like the way yes, Northwestern needs some road wins. They got them late, the Maryland and Indiana in late February. But you got the win over Purdue, you got the win over Dayton, Michigan State, which is not far off from here, and a protected seed in Illinois. This is a solid resume if you can ignore tier 4 on the loss side. I allow a team to have one bad day, and boy, they had a bad day. But I mean, on a neutral core, if this were an 8-9 game, for instance, I'd go with Northwestern in a heartbeat.
Well, they did beat them at one point in the year, so. I mean, granted, it wasn't a neutral floor, but I don't get Dayton.
It was at Northwestern, yeah.
Yeah,
I
don't get Dayton
any meat. They have no meat on their resume. St. John's, but that's about it. Dayton.
St. John's isn't in yet, so it's not like this is about where they top out resume wise. I've been saying it kind of for a while, and I know that a lot of prognosticators have them several lines higher. I just don't see it on paper. I don't see it on the court. Again, week after week after week, I've been putting them in this 8-9 range. I think this is about where they belong.
Hey, you finally got enough of us to convince it that they fell. They were the top seed on the 8 line, but they fell.
Yeah. And the one thing I'll add to that is it's a shame that the whole world of bubble teams is praying for them to win the A10, which I don't know if they will, the way they're playing, because it's a bid steal. With Richmond's loss this past weekend, it's a 1-bid league if Dayton wins the conference tournament.
Yeah, and as a commissioner, you hate that. You want more than that.
Brian, we're going to start revealing some potential first-round matchups. I'm going to throw out the 9 seeds here. Dayton's opponent is going to be Nebraska. Northwestern gets TCU. Boise State gets Oklahoma, and Texas gets Florida Atlantic. Any thoughts on these 4 teams?
I hope they go up against Nebraska because I want to see Nebraska finally get that monkey off their back in their first NCAA tournament game.
Wow.
So I like them. I really do.
I'm 100% with you on that one.
Matt, let me ask you about TCU. I don't know that they're even a 9 seed right now. There is so many losses on this profile. It's starting to stink a little bit, isn't it?
Yes, but then wait till we look at the 10 seeds, and therefore you're going to see why. Like, I had one team not mentioned. I had Colorado State above TCU, but like, it's after 37. I started doing some weird, wild things because hey, I hate everything beyond about 37. So like TCU's lucky that basically the entire bubble that we were called strong a month ago basically imploded on itself because they've been some trouble in other times, and that 322 SOS is not helping them. But I think they're still just enough above the bubble fray to where they'll survive that and not be in a serious discussion for not even making the field.
Griggs, quick point on TCU.
Yes, when you look at if you do sort of a deep a categorical like a deep dive into previous tournament selections and teams that have been placed inside the bubble, you'll find that it's actually kind of rare for a team that didn't win more than that wasn't 4 games above 500 in their conference to get selected if they had no real wins against teams from the field out of conference. This TCU team is not 4 games above 500. They're 4 games below. And they beat no one out of conference. So now again,
they're 500 in conference. They went 9-9.
Oh, okay. They went 9-9,
yeah.
but they're not 4 games above, and they had a really weak out of conference schedule. So this would, if you look at things categorically like that, I'm not saying they're not going to get selected, but teams like this more often than not are left out.
Tytel, this is the TCU team that I think if there's a surprise team left out, if we were doing the field right now, this would be the team that they want to punish from the Big 12 for those lousy non-conference strength schedules.
Agreed, but this is also a case where like we talk about like every game matters. Like every point matters. If this team didn't beat Houston by 1 and beat Baylor in triple overtime, they're not in the tournament. That's literally like 2 points the whole season getting them in because they're great wins.
Well,
And
they
the
make it the reverse then.
GT.
Yeah.
And Joby, you had a point on one of the other teams in this line was Florida Atlantic.
I think we're glossing over because of the wonderful Final Four run last year. Florida Atlantic is not all that. Let's pull back and look at FAU. They beat Titel's team. That's a great win. Awesome. Well, Chicago State is a great win over Northwestern. The fact is now the bad that has sunk in with Bryant, Florida Gulf Coast, and yeah, I think you got to beat Charlotte and UAB. They're above 100 in the net. Okay, I don't care if it's on the
Gotta
road.
be one of
Above
them.
100 in
Jeez.
the net. Yeah. South Florida won the regular season, so I'll give a little pass on that. Arizona win against the field. A&M's likely out. They're right on the bubble. No other team except maybe no other team against the field, and a lot of losses way outside the field. 1-4. I hate that metric and that dichotomy. When you compare them to even the teams we're going to see, that Colorado team, for instance, that will be mentioned, compare them to the other teams. FAU fails compared to them. FAU, I'm not saying they're going, I think there's a sheen on them because of last year. We're not looking at them with open eyes. And once again, as I said with Dayton, it's a shame because they're the only team, in my opinion, from the American who can get an at large with South Florida's loss this past weekend, kind of like Richmond's. It's a shame that everybody has to root for them because they'll be a bid thief if it's not, because I do think they're in the field. I just think that we're treating them with kid gloves too much.
Let's go to the 10 line here. Stalika, let me bring you back in. St. Mary's, they get Michigan State. Wisconsin gets Colorado State. Florida gets Seton Hall, and Nevada gets St. John's. And I'm sure you probably have some comments on Michigan State, who I don't think you would have had in the field.
No, this is a team that, again, with their failure at Indiana, I'm starting to become more and more suspect. Losing at home to Iowa, another example where they failed to come up, and also losing at home against Ohio State, which has suddenly given the Buckeyes another lease on life. And that Baylor win, let's, again, not be deceived. A neutral court, but that was a neutral court in Detroit. That was a de facto home crowd for the Spartans. We're talking about a team that's like 8-13 versus the top 2 tiers. That is not good. 6-11. I mean, categorically, you could probably leave them out, but unfortunately, we look at some of the other teams on the bubble. We might not have a choice to put the Spartans in, but this is probably a bridge too far for me this year, unless they do some serious damage in the Big Ten tournament.
Absolutely. They cannot lose this Minnesota game.
That they make some at 18 and 14. I think that changes some to where you're not quite Villanova territory yet, but you're creeping there.
This is another case where the predictives are extremely biased in favor of the Spartans that I'm not comprehending.
Yeah. Other 2 teams on this line here, Titel, we had 2 Big East teams in Seton Hall and St. John's. How about the Johnnies, who ever since Rick Pitino went off have gotten red hot suddenly?
Yes, it's I would say it's a lesson. I don't think every coach can pull that off, frankly, though. So I don't think it is a lesson. And I wonder if he'll get some Mountain West scouting from another Pitino he's familiar with. I think that Colorado State and Wisconsin, man, talk about 2 teams going the wrong direction. That's I like your pick earlier about the 10 seed, but this is the 110 seed that I'd fear. And if you like coaching, I mean, Randy Bennett and Tom Izzo, like that's great stuff. And then they get to play Shaka, so love it.
Yeah, Wisconsin and Colorado State, I think they're both going to lose the game. That's
Yeah.
And I have a feeling that Michigan State will probably beat Marquette just to annoy the entire panel again.
Yeah.
Brian, I'm going to show you 2 of the 11 seeds. The other 2 are going to be where our first 4 games are, but 2 of them are Gonzaga gets Mississippi State and Texas Tech gets Virginia. Joby, your Who's just barely avoid the first 4.
Well, but a rematch of the 2019 final
Championship
that's
game.
a fun game.
that-
And
that'd be a
actually like
highlight
my
game.
chances there against them versus the other 6s, and a lot of I would have those 6s stink.
What about Mississippi State, Brian?
But yeah,
Oh,
no.
go ahead.
But, hey, Virginia comes down and Mississippi State, it's both Virginia and Mississippi State, probably barring a rash of bid thieves, probably are in with where they are. Virginia is a huge Clemson fan on Wednesday because you lost to Clemson on a neutral court's not going to probably knock you out.
Yeah, Mississippi State won ahead
Mississippi
of
State probably needs LSU, but it's not it's not an absolute killer because I think there is a little gap here.
That's why, Brian, I was going to ask you because Mississippi State with that's 4-game losing streak and with that Southern home loss, starting to stink a little, huh?
I mean, was it they lost? Was it Southern out of the SWAC?
Yep.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, you lose to a SWAC team.
The second place team in the SWAC team. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's brutal. Yeah, I mean, I have them like right here at the same spot, basically. So that's definitely. I mean, you could say that's if you lose in a home to a SWAC team, it's probably going to knock you down.
I think they really need. I don't think they can afford the LSU loss, Joby. I don't agree with you there. I think that could knock them out.
I wouldn't be testing the theory.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Let us go over to the South region. San Diego State gets the winner of one of our first 4 games, and I think you guys are going to like this. Colorado versus Indiana State. The Trees get an at-large bid by our field here. They are in despite losing that final to Drake and Titel. What do you think? Colorado and Indiana State getting in the field?
I'm mixed. I mean, I'm not seeing much good on Indiana State's resume besides beating Drake a long time ago. They were missing Avila when they lost at Alabama. They were missing Kent when they lost at SIU. So some explainable asterisk losses, as Chad likes to say. But I think that some power conference team is going to pass the Sycamores in the days ahead by getting some big time upsets in their big time tourney, while Indiana State just has to sit there with their hands sitting on their hands, and there's nothing they can do about it.
Well, that's a good point. There's nothing more Indiana State could do at all. If somebody gets on a run and you see 1 or 2 bid thieves, that's it. This spot is gone. It's completely gone. So in right now, maybe not in at the end of the day. And Griggs really in trouble for bid thieves are our last 2 teams there. Washington State's first round opponent. It would be New Mexico or Villanova.
I think it would be Villanova.
No, it would be both of them, I think. But your thoughts on these 2 teams being in as of right now, assuming no bid thieves and assuming no big run by somebody below them.
It's interesting because there's been points during the season where I really liked both of them and really thought they looked not just like tournament teams, but teams that could go a round or 2 in it. I certainly don't feel that way now about New Mexico. I don't even know if I would have selected them. I think I had them on the other side of the bubble. And Villanova, I mean, I like them more than New Mexico. I think if it were debate class and the assignment were to argue for Villanova, it would be an easier assignment than having to argue for New Mexico. But you could also strongly argue to leave them out. You know, the St. Joe's Temple Penn losses aren't good. And while none of the other losses are bad in and of themselves, I think the overall collection of them is. Like Kansas State, Butler, Xavier, those are not tournament teams. And I know that they were road games, but you got to win one of the 3. Jesus.
Let me throw it out here. The person who had Villanova rated the lowest of all of us was somebody who did not even have them in the top 55, and that was me. I don't think this team is anywhere close. I see 3 tier 3 losses, a 12-14 record against the top 3 tiers. Matt, I don't think if this team goes 1-1 in the Big East tournament. They beat DePaul. They lose to, would it be Marquette up next after that? They're 18-15. That's garbage to me.
Yeah, no, that's where I didn't really want to put them on my list. No, I did at the very, I like 53rd because it gets rough down there. But no, I don't think they're that close to me. Yeah, the under 500 against the top 3 tiers and only 3 over 500. Those are like almost individually disqualifying. The combination of the 2. I'm surprised we had them in and mind you, I'm going to utter something I really don't want to utter. I would replace it with Texas A&M.
I'll tell you, well, you just mentioned another team that I did not have in my top 55. So let's go ahead and pull A&M up here. Let me see here. Salika, is Texas A&M close? Because instead of having 3 tier 3 losses, they've got 4 tier 3 losses.
And one of them is to Vanderbilt, which is like a tier 5.
That's well, maybe tier 3.5, considering how bad Missouri and DePaul are this year. But I will say, at least Texas A&M took a one step forward with a thrashing at Ole Miss. But lo and behold, they're gonna have to face Ole Miss in the conference tournament again, and they have shown that they can make a deep run in the SEC tournament. But the committee has also shown,
They
even
don't
when they're
give a
beating
bleep.
teams left and
Yeah.
right, it may not matter if they don't win the auto bid.
Three wins against protected seeds and another against a team wearing white. They've got some really nice top.
Yeah.
I
And-
agree. The conference has not been kind to them. That's why they're where they are. But when you compare them versus Villanova, I'm sorry, their top is actually better, I would argue, than Villanova. And
I
their
take the
bottom,
counter because they
I'm
won at Creighton. I take the
sorry,
counter.
you know, I mean, the at Creighton's great, but I look at also, I see Kentucky, Iowa State, Tennessee, and the added component of Florida being the which is a top half of the bracket team, being the tiebreaker for me.
And then I
And the overall
clearly,
record is just slightly better. 3 games versus 5 games over 500 is a difference. It
they
is.
clearly so someone must have trapped Buzz in the closet when they made the schedule, because that 21 non-conference, that's uncharacteristic for a Buzz team, but that might be saving the day for him right now.
I got to admit, though, 40 years ago, that would have been a great conference road win at SMU, but not in 2024.
The road win at Ohio State's now looking decent. Ohio State's going to be a top half NIT team.
Yeah, but they
Let-
weren't
let-
when they won there. So
let me go ahead and
That's
reveal
because we
our
didn't know maybe
feel.
what Ohio State was. Who knows?
Yeah, our top 4 teams out. A&M was the second team out, actually. Providence, Pitt, and Iowa were the other 3 teams that got serious consideration here. Brian, do you want to make a case that any of these 4 teams should have been in over one of our last 4 teams?
I mean, Iowa's okay, but they're about the only one. I think this is probably fine. A&M is the only other one I may have in as opposed to Villanova. But like besides that, I think Iowa may be the only other one of those teams that I kind of like. I think Wake Forest. I watched them lose to Georgia Tech. They just crumbled in that game. I don't know. I feel like
Wake is
Iowa.
terrible.
Well, if it
Yeah.
makes you feel better, Georgetown is going to turn out the lights against Providence and remove all doubt.
Yeah, Providence at Titel, I think, is the most interesting of this group. But again, that 9 and 12 versus the top 3 tiers, isn't that a disqualifier?
It is. The second that Bryce Hopkins went down with injury, I think it was a disqualifier, because you can't lose the heart and soul of your team, with all respect to Devin Carter, who's arguably the best player in the conference. My question is, what if the Providence team doctor makes a little tweet this week that says Bryce Hopkins' recovery is going better than expected? Can the committee then say, oh, when healthy, Providence is definitely one of the 68 best teams in the country. Therefore, we're going to put him in on the chance that Bryce Hopkins is healthy.
Well, if I was Providence, I would be, even if he has doesn't have a shot to play for 6 more months, I'd be broadcasting that right now.
Yes.
Then hopefully someone in the committee is like, wait a minute, he tore his ACL. You ain't coming back into a basketball court too much after
I'd
that.
have him walk out on the court at the end of a Big East tournament game. Just walk out there and do it, take a shot, get off the court, walk off.
Play
I
the
don't
final
think he
10
can
seconds of the
physically do that
Georgetown
yet,
game.
though. That's the thing with an ACL like that.
I
But
don't think that would work, but
yeah,
why not?
probably
Yeah.
doesn't.
Okay, real quick. The other teams also consider these are other teams that got votes to be in the top 55, not necessarily in the field, but at least close to the field. We had Ohio State, Wake Forest, Richmond, South Florida, Utah, Vatech, Kansas State, Butler, UNLV, and Memphis all at least got 1 vote by somebody. The one team that I think I wanted to take half a second to discuss is Ohio State. This, other than the 9-11 conference record, there's a lot that's coming up here. And Matt, if they beat Iowa in this opening for their first game in the Big Ten tournament, is it not very serious Ohio State time?
The one that hurts is that 5-11 against the top 2 tiers. It's like,
But
you could
14
be
and 12 when you had in tier 3, and that
I think this is where it's so far below 500 in the top 2 tiers. That's where I think you could be a little bit under 500, but that to put to the point where it looks okay. You basically got to win the Big Ten tournament. So that's
hold on a second. Is that any better than TCU's 7-11 versus the top 2 tiers that were in our field? It's a little bit better. It's by a little bit better by 2, but
like
if they
Ohio
beat
State,
Iowa,
yeah.
it becomes 6-11, and maybe TCU is 7-12 at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There you go. That's what you win a couple games in the Big Ten tournament. We might look. I mean, and then the weird, I guess, yeah, like the coaching change, which I'm shocked. I quite value Holtman as a coach, but man, like I guess they were done listening to him, and then Jake Diebler, they are listening to Jake Diebler.
I just know in Xavier land, I am 100% for Jake Diebler getting the permanent job.
No, I think unfortunately the latest word is Rocco's heart's about to be broken.
Yeah. He knows.
Yeah.
Okay. On that note, let me go here and let's go through the remaining teams. Let's start on the 12 line here because actually I would note that two of the teams on our 12 line actually would have been above at least our last team and above Villanova. Actually, in between New Mexico and Villanova, there were two teams by our rankings. They were both Drake and James Madison, both auto bid winners. We've got Princeton and Grand Canyon there at the 12 line as well.
A quick comment here, Chad. I think year after year after year, more often than not, I would much rather be a 6 seed than a 5 seed, even though the paper on the 11 line's better. I wouldn't. I'd rather play everyone on the 11 line instead of over anyone on that 12 line. That's a good line.
I agree with you. I think that is a very dangerous, very live 12 line.
Yeah, I had Drake on my 10 line. Like
The 13 line here, we've got Auburn gets UC Irvine, Alabama gets Samford in that in-state battle.
Yeah.
Illinois gets Charleston, and Kansas gets a dangerous McNeese team.
I would go with McNeese. I would. Wow, great game.
I like Samford too. Sneaky.
Yeah.
Buckyball against
Buckyball.
Bama ball.
That's an
yeah.
in-state battle too. Those are always a tricky game.
The
Bucky
14 line, Baylor gets Vermont, Duke gets Toledo, Creighton gets Oakland, and Kentucky gets Louisiana Tech. On the 15 line, Titel, you're going to get to see who Arizona gets to play, and Matt, you get to see who Marquette gets to play. Marquette gets the OVC champions Morehead State. Iowa State gets Montana, the highest remaining seed in the Big Sky tournament. And yes, after we've
For
seen,
now.
after we are now, I believe 6 games into the Big Sky tournament, and not a single top seed has won a game yet.
My bracket is intact.
Colgate gets Tennessee. Quinnipiac against Arizona. That's tough. Quinnipiac got to cross country to Salt Lake City to play Arizona. You get a bye into the second round there, Titel.
Thank you.
Colgate may not be super easy for Tennessee, at least for a while. I think Colgate could hang around. I think it'll still be like a 10 to 15 point win for Tennessee, but I still think Colgate is not. They're actually all right.
Oh no, they're great, but they're not Tennessee good.
16 line. Purdue gets the winner of a South Dakota State Stetson. Congrats to the Hatters' first ever NCAA tournament bid. Locked up here. They're on their way to Dayton to play South Dakota State, according to us. Connecticut it's Longwood. Houston gets the winner of a Merrimack Grambling game. And North Carolina gets Norfolk State. That's our field. On that note, I'm going through each of you. Any other final thoughts, either what we did or anything else you want to discuss? And Mr. Sleeka, let me start off with you tonight.
I look at teams like Providence and Iowa. You want to talk about opportunities missed, where the Friars actually got out to a double-digit lead against UConn. Looked like they were going to get a win to help their cause, and then they just completely fall apart late in the first half as well as the second half. And you look at the Iowa Hawkeyes, who had been coming on strong themselves. They failed to capitalize at home against Illinois, so they're going to have a lot of work to do. And I look at a team like Richmond. It might come down to, Richmond or Loyola potentially winning that, the A10 auto bid, because again, I do not trust Dayton whatsoever to win the A10 outside of their own arena.
Yeah, these problems we have with the last 4 teams we put in may all take care of themselves.
Yeah.
Brian, any other final thoughts from you?
Look out for James Madison, McNeese. Some of these teams in that 12, even the 13 range, I think they're going to be maybe some interchangeability between some of those ones at the bottom of the 12 line, top of the 13 line. So it's going to be real interesting to see us kind of move those around. And it's going to be a real battle between those teams and the teams that are like that 4 or 5 line, really.
I agree. Matt.
I'll say, man, if they lose in the conference tournament, along with Indiana State, who I definitely think belongs in, I hope our committee and the real committee would give a long look to both Princeton and Grand Canyon, because I think they are better teams than some of these teams we're putting at the bottom of the field right now. Even New Mexico have like most of the year, but them, Villanova, in that A&M. Like, no, I'd rather see Grand Canyon and Princeton in. Like,
I think it's a tougher argument for the Lopes. I mean, they did beat San Diego State, was at home, but they've got those 2 bad losses, and would now be 3 bad losses. It's an interesting argument for Princeton. I know Titel does not want to hear it, but I think it's an interesting one. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to happen, but it's an interesting one. Titel, your final thoughts?
Couple bracket notes of interest. We could have a Houston, Oklahoma in the Kelvin Sampson game here in the South region. We could have Arizona, North Carolina in the Caleb Love game in the West region. And Stalika mentioned Clemson before. Of all the 12 seeds, James Madison, like after upsetting the Spartans, played like nobody good in or out of conference, arguably App State. But I think that based on Clemson's track record, I would like the Dukes, even though both teams have to fly across the country to play in freaking Spokane. I think I would pick JMU in that one.
If I'm a James Madison fan, I might be interested in booking tickets to Detroit right now. They might win 2 games in this bracket.
Don't get. That's the other thing about the James Madisons and the under the radars. Flying to Spokane is a more relaxing, restful trip than most of the ones they make on those buses.
That's true. They actually got to go to play. They don't have to ride a bus
Yeah.
at
And
3
it's
o'clock in the
chartered.
morning.
It is chartered. The
that-
NCAA treats you very well when you get into it. It's amazing. It's great. You get $125 a day for team. It's amazing. It's great.
it puts
Joby.
it-
Okay, go ahead, Matt. Final
I'd
comments.
say real quick. I'd say in a region like that too, the fans would root for him because it's a true neutral region.
Yeah. And now one thing about JMU.
Joby, your final thought. Yeah, go ahead.
JMU puts a lot of money in their sports. I bet they're paying. I bet they have charter. Like,
Oh,
they're not.
you
They're
don't pay
not,
for it. The
Grand
NCAA
Canyon.
pays for it.
Yeah, okay. Any other final thoughts, Joby?
But yes, the one I have is every year it's what Matt kind of hinted at with TCU. You know, TCU's got to be careful not to slip too close to the bubble, because if you do, if you have a bad out of conference schedule, you are in trouble. I truly believe that with all my heart. Look at team number 3 on Teams Out. Trust me, if they just played a reasonable out of conference schedule in the 200s, I think Pitt would be in our field, to be very honest with what they've done. But instead, Pitt's out of conference schedule, what is it? 342. How many teams are in Division 1? 362. Oh my God. Awful, awful, awful. So as much as I appreciate actually what Coach Capel said about the net, the funny thing is he kind of gamed it himself.
Yeah.
All right. Griggs, you want to finish the show out?
Yeah, one of the things is the committee representatives and the NCAA representatives have said year after year after year, and for the most part, I've believed them, even though sometimes I've been like, is that they consider the conference tournaments the same as they do everything else. It's 1 game out of 30. They don't overvalue them. They don't undervalue them, but they do consider them. And I want to believe that. So I'm going to. I will say that our mock committee intends to do that. I also understand that considering a game is just that. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to act on it. Sometimes you look at a game or a championship game, say it's the Big 12 and it's Houston and Iowa State, you might decide that a win or a loss doesn't change either team's profile. They already are who they are, but they say they look at everything, and I really hope they do. Otherwise, what the hell are we even doing these tournaments for?
I hope they are too. You can now go ahead and take a look at the brackets down below us here. Let's go ahead and get everybody up, get that down here. But on that note, on behalf of John Titel and John Sleek up top here, David Griggs, the center square, Matt Sikowski, Joey Fortson, Brian Black with his Samford jersey going to the NCAA tournament there.
Congrats to Sanford. Yeah.
Congrats to them, and congrats to JMU as well tonight. We'll be back in a couple hours doing our Championship Week video notebook, or maybe about an hour, actually not that far from now. On video notebooks every night from here on out. And next Monday night, we'll be back to preview the NCAA tournament. On that note, though, thanks for joining us. I'll talk to you again real soon.